So your new software is ready to launch. Are you planning to just shut down the old and turn on the new? Think again. In this video, I'll dive into the not so obvious costs associated with your freshly minted custom built software. Hi, my name is Adam McGowan, Firefield's CEO. My day job is to help non-technical leaders harness technology in order to grow, protect, or spark change in their businesses. I created tech for the exec to do the same for you. In this video, I'm going to break down the costs associated from switching from your prior tool to your new custom-built piece of software. All right, well, switching costs come in three varieties. Cost number one is what I call parallel costs. So parallel costs relate to expenses that you've got to shell out for your old tool in addition to the new tool. There's a couple of reasons why this might be the case. One might be that you're simply not ready to completely flip the switch. Sometimes that happens because you need both running in parallel because you brought most of the functionality to the new tool, but not all of the functionality. Sometimes you do that if you're running a test, if you want to sort of try before you buy, if you will. You want to make sure that you're on the right track before you develop everything into the new tool. So the parallel cost there can oftentimes be pretty substantial because you're running two tools at the same time. And another reason why you might have to continue paying for your old tool has to do with data. So the migration of data from one tool to the other can be pretty complicated. In some cases, you might find that you need most but not all of the data to get transferred over. What we typically see is the top 80 or 90% of the data is pretty clean, easily transferable, but it's the last bit that takes a huge amount of time. And oftentimes it's just not prudent to simply let it go. So keeping your prior system up and running so it can house and provide access to data is another reason you might have parallel costs. So making sure you think about what's the level of parallel cost and for what amount of time might you have to maintain two systems is important in your estimation process for a new build. The cost category number two has to do with migration of data. It simply means moving it from one place to another, from the old to the new. We just talked about how you might need to keep an old system up and running because data migration is not always perfectly seamless. Well, a lot of it has to do with complexity of the data. How clean is the data? So when we say clean, what we mean is all the data in a format that's very logical? Are the relationships between the data in the database sensical or sensible as well? Are they relationships ones that still apply to the way you run the business? It's oftentimes the case when people are building new projects that they learn a lot about the quality, or in some case, the messiness of their old data. And making decisions about if and when to clean up that data can have a pretty big impact, particularly when it comes to switching. Because if you want to spend the time and effort to clean up that data and do away with the old, that can be a pretty substantial project. Likely extremely valuable, but really important to keep in mind that migration can be almost non-existent if you're building a new tool that replaces nothing or a non-technical process. It can be huge if you're building a new tool to replace a very sophisticated, complicated, mission-critical prior tool. And the third category of switching costs has to do with retraining. Now, in a prior video, we talked about the human cost of development. And you may think this is a little bit repetitive, but it's a little bit different. Because in that video, we talked about the major stakeholders involved in the entirety of the development of a new tool and how extensive their involvement can be. This is more around the new users who are going to be responsible for actually engaging with the tool. It could be your customers, it could be potential prospective customers, it could be your workforce. And getting them up to speed on what it's going to take to use this tool, particularly if they got really comfortable with a prior tool, is really important to keep in mind. And there's a couple factors here you should focus on. You definitely need to focus on the complexity of the tool for sure. You need to also have an understanding of what is the technical experience and savviness of the user base. More technology experience, likely an easier transition. Less, and there should be a little bit more of a challenging transition. It might take a little bit more time, might require a little bit more training. So making sure you're very thoughtful about who's the user, what's their prior experience, what's their relationship with tech, How quickly can they get up to speed with a new tool, and how intuitive is the new tool that you built? All of those factors are going to play into what the retraining costs look like, from as little as 0 for a perfectly seamless transition. Be nice to have, but it's very unlikely, all the way up to a very extensive amount of work that may need to even start well before you launch the product. So those are the costs you really need to focus on when it comes to switching. Now that we've covered switching costs, click this video to learn about the final expense associated with custom software. And don't forget to subscribe. I'm posting new content at least once a week to help you compete and win in an increasingly technical world. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you on the next episode.